As you can see, we have the resume in the background, and this is what I call a targeted resume. And the reason I say that it's a targeted resume is, yes, because of the form of the template, right? Because of the way it's shaped, but more than that is the way we strategically place certain items. So what's interesting is you will see this same format in quite a few different areas. If you look at a lot of people and their resume, you'll probably recognize this type of format. The difference here is the strategy behind the format. It really doesn't matter the format you use. I particularly like this format, and I basically put together a lot of different formats to come up with this one. And I then lined it up with a study that was conducted by the Ladders regarding the site picture, the hot points on a document. They went through this, they had this survey done, or this exercise done, where they could actually see where the eye movements were for recruiters and hiring managers. And you can see the hot spots. So if you go to the ladders.com, I think is what their website is, they'll have that study on there, or you could go Google and search it. And you can see those hot points. And so this targeted resume takes that into consideration. But what really makes a difference when we dig into this is the strategy behind the information. So a lot of times what you'll find is people that have a format similar to this, they put their resume together because it is the format, and then they hand that same document out to everybody. That's not really a targeted resume. It may be tailored to your autobiography, but it's not really tailored to the job itself, and it's not targeted to any one job. So I'm going to show you by using this format, and this is the format that I use in the workbook that I have and all the different videos that I put together. This format here with the strategy behind it is very, very, very powerful. All right. I just want to ask again: is there a position out there that you're looking at, and then maybe I can actually type it into this at the same time? If so, please, push it forward in the chat block. If not, I'll just continue. All right. So what we have is, obviously you have the name, but there's a lot of questions here. Right below the name, if you're a military retiree, should you put your retired rank there? Well, I focus on federal government jobs and defense contracting jobs, so federal contracting. And in federal contracting, yes, you do. In federal government, yes, you do. If you are applying to a non-government, non-defense type position, you probably are not going to do that. All right? They're not going to understand it anyway, so why do that? You're putting it on there strategy-wise, right? There's a strategy behind everything. So if I am going to apply to a defense contractor, and if you don't know who those are, just Google search them real quick on your phone or on your computer. But you're talking about defense contracting, not federal government for tonight. Federal government uses a different type of resume. But defense contracting, this is what I would recommend using. So it's very, very simple, and the strategy, you'll see it pop out. All right. So if you're retired like me, then you would put your retired rank underneath your name, just like that. All right. You would put Sergeant First Class, U.S. Army retired. You'd put like me, Major U.S. Army retired. Something like that. You're going to put in that area up there. Now, the contact information is extremely important. A little bit about that. Obviously, you want a phone in which you can be reached at any moment of the day, or something they can at least leave a voicemail. The email, though, is really interesting because if you look at a lot of resumes, like I do, you see a lot of different funny email addresses. You know, nothing against having some funny email addresses. I have some myself, but I am definitely not going to put that on a resume. So my recommendation is if you have a email address like that, then keep it for your private life, but your professional life, create a Gmail account or Yahoo or whatever email and put your name, something professional. All right. More than likely, the best advice you could ever have given to you is put your name, your first and last name, at Google or at Yahoo or something. Now, the address, there's a strategy behind the address, and I know some of this sounds a little simplistic right now, but it will speed up here in a minute. The address is very important because, for one, I don't believe anyone should ever put their home address on their resume. And look, your resume is your document. There's no reason to put your home address on your resume. Basically, it's the same as putting your home address on a piece of paper and just giving your piece of paper or your address to anybody who walks by. All right, so there's no real reason to do that. However, so we're going to take that out. However, you do need the city and state. So the city and state is a decision that you're going to have to make. If I, for instance, if I live in Stafford, Virginia, and I am looking or applying to a job in Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, then that's within commuting distance, then yes, I'm going to put Stafford, Virginia. If I am applying to a job that's in Florida, that's in California, Germany, anything that's outside the local commuting area, then I am not going to put the city at all. I'm actually going to align these to where my email, I'm going to line these up straight, but my email address will be on one side and my phone number will be on the other. Because I don't want anyone, although they're not supposed to be biased when it comes to that, as far as having to pay you to travel to the location if you get hired. I don't even want to use that, right? As I don't even want to give it the benefit of the doubt. So if you are applying to something outside your local area, I would not put anything except for your contact information. All right. Now, if you're applying for something in your local area, yes, put your local commuting area address in there. Not the address, just the city and state. Now, let's say I have relatives in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm applying for a job in San Antonio, Texas. Now, what do I do? Well, if I were to get that job, I would probably have to live with those relatives for a short amount of time while I find a place to actually live. That is what I'm going to do in this resume. So I would put San Antonio, Texas. All right. Now, you may say, well, you can't do that because you don't live there. Well, there's nothing. If you've looked at 100 resumes, then you have literally seen 100 different types of formats for resumes. All right. There is no standard guideline for resumes. All right. Now, if you're applying to a job online and they have you fill out a form and it says, where do you live? Then yes, you got to put where you live. But for your paper resume, if you are going to live with somebody who's a relative and you know that's an address, then that's what I would put, because that's within the local commuting distance, and that's where you would potentially stay temporarily if you had to go to an interview or you got a job. All right. It's just a strategy. If you don't feel comfortable with that, then don't put anything at all if it's outside your local commuting area. All right. Now, any questions on that before we move on? Because I really separate this into multiple sections as we go through this. All right, so under the highlighted qualifications, what you're going to see, and remember, we're talking about defense contracting, federal contracting jobs. So what you're going to see up in this area here is the key requirements for the job. So if you look at a job announcement, within that job announcement, there's certain requirements. All right, but there's certain qualifications as well. And so this is really where you would put those types of things. For instance, like you see here, if you have a clearance, they're not, and they require a clearance for the job, and you know they're not going to accept anyone into that job that doesn't have a clearance, then that's where you put that. If it says that you require a bachelor's, then that's where you would put your bachelor's. And you can see by this example, it's an expected 2018. They don't actually have one. So we're not lying that we put a bachelor's in there. What we're doing is we're highlighting the fact that we're in school and we're going to be graduating by 2018. And the job this person was applying to was a telecommunications job. So we put the advanced radio operator qualification up there as well. So this is where you would put your clearances, your degrees, and I would, and your polygraphs if you have that. This is and then you put the dates, and I like putting the dates up here as well because, you know, especially for your clearance, and but you don't have to. You know, you don't have to. And sometimes if the date, and this is a strategy again, you know, if I had a top secret clearance in 1986, but after that I never had one again, am I really going to put 1986 in here? Probably not, because I don't want the reader to look at it and disregard my resume. So if instead of putting 1986 in this, which makes it look bad and look old, right? Then what I probably will decide to do strategically is not have a date at all. So now they have to actually come and talk to me if they want to know the date. And that gives me an opportunity. All right. So your strategy, that's really what it does. It gives you a way to actually get somebody to talk to you. All right, so you know that you put all those up there. Those are the key requirements. Now, if you are, let's say you're a cybersecurity person and you have a CISSP, that is like such a huge certification. I put those really big certifications behind your name, comma, CISSP. All right, just like that. If you have a PhD, not really a master's, unless it's an MBA, but if you have a PhD or a law degree, something to that effect, then yeah, I would probably put the PhD behind your name. All right, and then obviously I'd put the master's, bachelor's, and all that down here. All right, and so it really highlights your qualifications. So now, if you look at this resume, and we're not even halfway through the first half of the page, you can tell, okay, this person has a great degree, is retired from the military at a certain rank, so we can make, we're applying obviously to a defense contractor job, so they're familiar with the Department of Defense and the military. So this retired rank and grade comes with all kinds of assumptions, right? Because they know you were dedicated, loyal, motivated, you stayed for that length of time, and that encompassed a lot of training, a lot of leadership, supervision, things like that. They know how, if you're a commuter or if you're far away, maybe, right? If we delete that, then they don't know where you live at this point. The only way they can tell where you are currently at is based on your job, and that's really not a real strong way of knowing where you're located, because there's so many geographical bachelors who work in one location and live in another. All right, so but this is the strategy here, and then highlighted qualifications. So now we know top secret bachelor's degree in radio operator with the dates. All right, so now the next line is probably one of the most important lines you could ever put in your resume. And it is the line that you will probably never see in the majority of resumes. And that line right there, especially the underline and bold, is the job title for which this person was applying. So let me say that again. So if you have a job announcement, the title of the job on that job announcement, this is where it would go, right here. So if I'm going to apply to an analyst position and the job title actually says analyst only, just analyst, then I'm going to put analyst in that line. If the job title of the job for which I'm applying says program manager, then I'm going to put program manager. All right. If the job title actually says senior program manager, then I'm actually going to put, let me try to do this, senior program manager. Okay. Now, why do I do that? Why am I recommending that you put the job title of the job that you're applying to in that block? All right. The reason that we do this is because now it will force you to write a tailored resume that supports the title, basically, of your book. That's the title of your book right there. I mean, I look at resumes kind of like I do books. That's the title of your book. All right. All of these job titles, those are all chapters. It's chapters in your life, right? But really, that's what it boils down to. They're chapters. And so when a reader looks at your resume, what they're looking at is they're looking at the title of the book. Do they want that title or not? Well, obviously they do, because they've announced the job. But if you're missing the title of a book, what's the first question? If you were missing the title of a book and the librarian in a library gave you that book, what is the first thing you are going to ask that librarian? Granted, most of us don't go to libraries anymore, but I'm dating myself a little bit, right? What you're probably going to say is, what's this book about? Right? I mean, if you don't know the title, you're probably going to say, what's this book about? Well, it's the same thing. Most resumes do not have the job title at the top of their resume. And I consider this the top. Anything in the top half of the first page, I consider the top. All right. So that right there, if you don't have it in your resume, like this, if you don't have it in your resume, and I give you that resume, the first question I'm going to ask you is, so what do you want to do? Right? It's the first question anyone asks. And the reason they ask is because the majority, 99% of the resumes that are handed over do not have the job title of the job for which they're applying on it. If you don't have the job title on your resume, then I would say that your resume probably is an autobiography. It talks all about you with no real tailoring or targeting of a job. Now, if you actually put the job title back in, now that becomes a targeted resume. All right, so I differentiate between targeted and tailored resumes. And so a targeted resume focuses on one job announcement. All right. So, for instance, this particular resume is focused on this particular job announcement. So, therefore, this is a targeted resume. Everything within this resume will be tailored to this job title. So, everything in this resume will be tailored to this target. All right, but this resume in and of itself is targeted against this job announcement. Hopefully that makes sense. What it does is it really clarifies for everyone involved, you and the reader, what to expect, what they're reading. It immediately assumes you have a theme in your resume. All right, so now let's just say this person is applying, and we'll actually just use the one we had before. Gosh. Oh, we're going all the way back. All right, telecommunications specialists. All right. Now, what I like to do is I like to create these blocks up here. You see these two here. All right. And I would recommend not putting more than 8 bullets up there. So you see how I have 4 and 4. I would not put any more than that. Now that doesn't mean like you see here, and let me zoom in this a little bit so you can see it better. All right. Let me zoom that in a little bit so you can see it. So what I like to do is I like these 4 bullets. But strategy-wise, this is my recommendation. Remember when we talked about the requirements in the job announcement. So what you're going to see in a job announcement, you're going to see the job title, the duty description, and then the mandatory requirements. And we already said a lot of the top really heavy requirements we're going to list up in this area, right?